Hi, welcome back. You're watching MF Corner. Now, one of the common issues that a lot of us as investors face is that, naturally nobody has any one goal in life, right? We all have different goals for which we want to plan and invest, and we want to have that money ready when you're nearing that goal. So what happens is that if you're simultaneously investing for 5, 6 goals, there is this tendency to sort of, take out money from goal, and that might eat into your longer term goals, right? So how do you avoid that? That is the subject today. How do you invest for various goals simultaneously and ensure that all of your goals remain on track? Harshvardhan Roongta of Roongta Securities joins in. Hi Harsh, thanks very much for joining in. Before we actually talk about the operational part of this topic, which is how it must be done, the basics first, right? Which is that, how do you, when you're planning so many goals, how do you actually decide how much money each goal would require? How does the basic structuring begin?
Hi, Samara. You've rightly, started this show with a very important point, saying that all individuals have several different goals, and how do you go about assigning them and putting them in each individual bucket? So let me begin with the basics. So every individual will have certain goals, which will be short term in nature, which will be medium term or long term in nature. So right now, what we're trying to do is trying to segregate the goals as per time periods. So when you look at short-term goals, they will have certain different nuances to take care of. So the primary objective of a short-term goal would be to have liquidity when you need the money. So rate of return, capital appreciation, those don't become the primary focus. The primary focus is that you get the money when you need it, even if that investment yields you a lower return. Now, for example, if you look at a liquid fund, that is essentially the product which is designed to take care of liquidity requirements of individuals. So this particular scheme will give you low returns, but will ensure that you get the money in one day's notice. So one working day, you'll get the money in your account, and without any premature withdrawal penalties, erosion, more so often so. So liquid funds, for that matter, will take care of short-term needs. So when you're planning for short-term goals, liquidity, the need for liquidity supersedes the rate of return that you will possibly try to get achieved from your investments. Now, when you look at long-term goals, on the contrary, they are essentially meant to create wealth for you and beat inflation. So basically, the money that you invest in, the products that you invest in should be able to beat the inflation, which is the cost of living going up, and they should generate higher returns. So for long-term goals that you have, the objective switches. The rate of return becomes more important than even getting liquidity because your goals are long-term. Now, having understood this basic, concept of short-term, long-term, and what actually investors should be looking at, let's move to the next step, which is actually identifying and quantifying your goals. So now, having understood what this long-term, short-term will do, the next step that you should do is start identifying your goals. So you will now start putting those goals, and you'll ascertain a particular goal and assign a specific time period or an indicative time period. Like you may say that I'm going to retire after 20 years from now. So that's a specific time period. You'll have children's higher education coming in 10 years from now, and marriages could be between 13 and 15 years. So you'll have a specific or an estimated time period against each goal. Having got that done, now it's the time to quantify those goals. So now you identified what you needed. Now you quantify those goals. So wherein you will take the present cost of each goal and then extrapolate that given inflation rate. For example, if you have a monthly expenditure of say 50,000 per month and you're planning for retirement and you have 20 years to go, you assume a rate of inflation at about 7%. You will be able to extrapolate that and say that if today 50,000 rupees worth of expenses I need, post retirement after 20 years at 7% inflation, this amount will become 2 lakhs per month. So now you've identified what you need and you've also quantified what is that you need after a specific period of time. Now, when you look at short-term goals, as I said, it is more to do with liquidity management. You may ignore the rate of inflation for short-term goals, like it could be emergency funds or holiday, and you would just specify a specific quantum, saying I need X amount of money for these particular goals. So this would be your starting point and a master kind of a plan to put in place, a master document to put in place, and then you start assigning your goals in specific time periods.
Fair enough. Okay, now let's talk about the conundrum, okay, which is that when we have different goals, I know a lot of people who say that I've bought ABC scheme for my child's education and XYZ scheme is for my retirement. Clearly that's not the right way to do because you aren't diversified enough, okay? Yet, if you create portfolios for each scheme, you're going to go crazy, right? So, say you have one portfolio, which is the right way to do it? I mean, do you invest for each goal separately, or do you just have this one master list and allocate portions from there? And if that is the way to go, how do you ensure that you're not eating into, say, a longer term goal?
So, well, Sumaira, theoretically speaking, you should have each goal and a specific scheme assigned towards it. So that is theoretically, and that essentially would mean that that's a good way to go about doing it. But on a practical note, I mean, imagine a situation, as you said, that you have one scheme allocated towards children's education, another scheme allocated towards retirement. So you'll have so many different schemes in your portfolio, which will only add up to the administrative burden. And further, we also talk about asset allocation. So you say the retirement I'm planning through one particular scheme, and then what you do is you go into debt, equity, and all those bits. The list will only keep getting longer. What you should ideally be doing, and if possible, you can maintain that discipline, is that divide all your goals in different time buckets. So as I said, when you have a short-term goal, so you say that probably all of my requirements, which are in the next 1 or 2 years, will come under my short-term goals. Anything between 2 to 5 years will come in my medium-term goals, and anything beyond 5 years will come into my long-term goals bucket. So you create these 3 buckets, and you assign all those goals. So retirement would be long-term, with children's education after 10 years would be long-term goals. Anything medium-term will be between 2 and 5 years time buckets. Now, within those time buckets, then you can look at asset allocation. So you can look at actually assigning schemes. So if you have a short-term goal, you'll go in for debt. You have a medium-term goal, you probably go into a hybrid kind of a scheme. You have a long-term goal, you will go into equities. So what essentially is an investor on a more practical note can do, which is less cumbersome and easy to manage, would be to divide all the goals within the time buckets and assign products which match those time periods.
Fair enough. Okay, finally, Harshvardhan, I know you make it sound easy, but for people like us who are maybe not so hands-on with numbers, etc., what kind of documentation should we maintain to ensure that, we remain on track with these goals?
Yeah, and that's another very practical point that you brought up, Sumaira. So all this, while we talk in theory, in practical, while listening sounds very good. Now come to a practical problem. Now you've made buckets where you've got, say for example, long-term goals. So you've got retirement, children's education, everything going into the long-term bucket. Now the first goal that comes up in the long-term bucket, there is a great tendency that you will pull out of it without worrying and without keeping in mind what happens to the other goals, which are again in the same time bracket. Now, this is where your first original document that you created, I said, identifying and quantifying your goals. So that's a goal sheet that you prepared initially, where you identified what you need and you also quantified against that. So I'll assume a situation you are 10 years from now and the first goal, which is your children's higher education, has come into picture. You pull out that goal sheet, you see what you had estimated at that point in time would be required for education requirement. So you restrict your withdrawal within that amount. If you exceed that, then it's going to be eating into your retirement process. So your original identifying and quantifying goal sheet becomes your go-to document. And you will have to refer to that and make sure that you're within your the limits that you had set for yourself. Needless to mention here, you don't open this sheet straight 10 years from now. You'll have to regularly review your portfolios and the growth that is happening, the cost escalations if at all. So you'll have to revise the quantity that you originally decided. And this is a regular process. That is what we say, that you should review your portfolio at regular intervals. So having put all these processes in stepwise manner, I'm very confident that you should be able to manage your investments within a very, spruced up portfolio, not just add n number of schemes into it, and you'll be able to efficiently manage it and meet all your goals in the future.
Yeah, basically the aspirational requirement shouldn't eat into the practical requirement. So therefore you have to keep your eye on what you had set out for, and in case you have fallen overall short of what you had estimated as your target, you may want to do like a pro rata allotment, right, towards all your goals, so that no one goal is cheated entirely. Harsh, thanks very much for joining in and for talking about this. With that, we'll wind up on MF Corner for today. Do keep sending us your queries and suggestions, and we'll take it up with our guests. For now, we'll wind up, but do stay tuned. Closing bell is up next.